Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, the number one source for news, analysis, and discussion on the Detroit Red Wings, the NHL, and all things hockey. Here are your hosts, Ryan Hanna, Brad Crisco, and Evan Lopsinger.
So last night we were at a Christmas party. Our one friend's parents throw it. It's like no set time to be there. People kind of come and go as they please. And my one buddy had their 1.5-year-old there, and there's a bunch of toys for her. What does she want to play with? The TV remote, of course. So I'm watching her a little bit. There's football on TV. She grabs this remote and somehow turns the Red Wings game on. I had no influence on this. You know me. I don't want to watch the Red Wings with how bad it's been lately.
Because you're a normal person, yeah.
Yes. Game had not started yet, so the game's on. People are like, oh, like, you like the Red Wings? I had my indoor Crocs on.
Right.
When I go to parties, I take my indoor shoes.
They weren't in sport mode.
They were not in sport mode.
Got it.
Top was down. And I had my Red Wings gibbet, which is like the little thing you put in your...
Let's just fold the podcast.
Yeah. No free ads.
Winged Wheel
free
Podcast
ads.
gibbets coming soon.
So I was like, yeah, I'm a Red Wings fan, blah, 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 whatever. And the Red Wings score early. Great. This is the best. We're beating the French. I'm happy. The baby's happy. We're all having a good time. Well, I started talking with some people, stop watching a little bit. 30 minutes goes by and it's like 3-1 Montreal. People are like, oh, aren't Montreal really bad? I was like, yes. And I just leaned down, grabbed my gibbet, put it in my pocket, and put the battery back in the remote so the baby could change the channel again.
Yeah, get us out of here, baby.
Oh, yeah, that was my night.
When the Red Wings are so bad that Evan says goodbye to his Red Wings gibbet, like that's the last straw. When people say, that's it, I'm done, I'm checked out, there's no stronger message to send as a fan base than taking your gibbets at your indoor Crocs. Oh, geez. We were saying before we hit record that it feels ridiculous that I'm sitting here next to the podcast, Red Wings Winged Wheel Podcast Christmas tree, wearing my itchy Detroit Red Wings ugly Christmas sweater, as festive as can be in the studio right now, and people are just seething listening to this episode.
Festive pitchforks out.
That's right, yeah. A little bit of tinsel, a little bit of garland around the handle, and we're ready for the holidays.
The angry listeners will be happy that you're wearing red. It will hide the evidence.
Yeah. And you know what? It'll incite the bulls and all of that. But there's no way that Detroit makes any major changes over Christmas break, right?
I'm not ruling anything out, but I think the roster freeze is unofficially all-encompassing.
Mm-hmm. You say that.
I say that with so little confidence.
So for anyone watching on YouTube right now, you'll notice the studio looks a little bit different. A gift to ourselves is it's a new setup so that we can see each other's ugly mugs a little bit better. So I don't know that it's necessarily a gift to ourselves, but to you two, I have a gift for you that I'll give you later this episode. It's not from me, it's from a listener and a patron, but I thought you would like it and I've saved it for Christmas. So before overtime, I'll give you your gifts.
Is it that gift I was hoping for before we started recording?
The knuckle sandwich?
No, it's just a nap.
No, it's nap by way of knuckle sandwich. That was our agreement.
Hey, however we get there.
We have hockey to talk about first. Folks, welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, here to talk to you about all things hockey, the Detroit Red Wings, the NHL, and lots more. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Hanna.
I'm Brad Crisco.
And I'm Evan.
On this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast, we're going to talk about the 2 Detroit Red Wings games. Yeah. It's not much other primer you need other than that. And thank goodness this episode, we are not doing prospect profiles. I told you I'm waiting for prospect profiles. I don't know that I can make it to 2025 anymore, but the reason we're not starting today is actually because we have Bob Kaser, voice of the Grand Rapids Griffins. It's a great interview and conversation with him, and he's going to give us a prospect update in the Detroit Red Wings system as we talk Grand Rapids, the Griffins players, and lots more. That's going to be you guys are going to love that one. So that's something we're really excited to share with you. Good timing too, because, oh my goodness, does this team need to be looking at anything other than the Red Wings right now? We're going to be talking about takeaways from the Red Wings games, all of that and lots more before we jump into NHL news and overtime. Before all that, I want to let you know that the Winged Wheel podcast is excited to host Winged Wheel podcast nights in partnership with the Grand Rapids Griffins and the Detroit Red Wings. Go to wingedwheelpodcast.com/links to find tickets, more information, and get those today because they are going fast. The Griffins night is on Saturday, January 18th in Grand Rapids at Van Andel Arena. Pre-game live recording for both actually versions of this event, featuring us and special guests. More importantly, the giveaway for the Griffins game, you have an opportunity to grab these Grand Rapids Griffins Winged Wheel Podcast co-branded beanies. There's one sitting on the podcast table in case you're watching on YouTube. And for the Red Wings one, which is on Saturday, March 29th, it's a Winged Wheel Podcast and Detroit Red Wings co-branded barber pole jersey, which is fantastic. So again, wingedwheelpodcast.com/links or go to the episode links in the description. Also, Hot Stove Stories, Rounding the Bases with Mike Tirico and guests is on Tuesday, January 14th. Get your tickets today at jamiedanielsfoundation.org. It's a breakfast event featuring not just Mike Tirico, but also Jason Benetti, Dan Dickerson, Len Kasper, Dan Shulman. Again, jamiedanielsfoundation.org to get your tickets. In addition to that, there's going to be a live auction and an online silent auction featuring some really, really, really great hockey and sports memorabilia, as well as other enticing packages and items. So go to jamiedanielsfoundation.org for more information to get your tickets and more on the live auctions and silent auction coming soon. Detroit with a back-to-back against the Montreal Canadiens, one at home, one on the road, Friday and Saturday. And going into this with no Simon Edvinsson, we have to open with that because, like, however you think about this, that set the stage for these games. I'm sorry to start off with such a bummer topic, but there's no way you can cut around the fact that the Detroit Red Wings defense is Edvinsson, Seider, and practically nothing else reliably. Like, you just look at the deployment of the Red Wings defensemen, and Derek Lalonde can't trust any other defensive pair for anything, really. And so you have the ultra-sheltered third pair, which is Gustafsson, Johansson, or whoever's there. And then Chiarot, Petrie, or whatever combination is there. You can't put out in any, high-danger scenarios. So it's Seider, Edvinsson, and a prayer. Edvinsson out after that high hit from Ristolainen. And the defense looked as bad as we thought it would.
Well, thankfully, they got the high-flying, uber-talented Montreal Canadiens so that at least we can sit on the, hey, maybe you just got beat by a good team. Hopefully, everybody picked up the sarcasm in that statement because that's what the Red Wings defense made the Montreal Canadiens look like. What was it 8, 9, 10 goals over 2 games from that group of castoffs? I shouldn't say that. Line has been a really cool story, and they got a couple other good forwards, but they are not the Tampa Bay Lightning. They are not the Toronto Maple Leafs, and they have now passed the Detroit Red Wings in the standings, for those of you who are keeping track of that. And, we've made this season's cooked jokes, and we've made a ton of jokes at the expense of the defense and the lack of scoring and the, in general, weaknesses of this team. This is the first time I'm actually dejected this year. I came away from those games going, nah, the jokes are gone. This team just sucks.
Not very merry of them to go into the break this way.
No, I wanted to have a good Christmas.
It was 9-4 total over the 2 games. So start with the first game. A 4-3 win by Montreal over Detroit. And it's not like this one was a blowout the entire game by any means. Montreal opens scoring. Patrick Kane ends up scoring to tie it. He continues his a little bit of a heat up lately. And you know what? It's going to be silly to make fun of any Montreal Canadian after they just dunked on Detroit for 2 straight games. But
no, I'm here for it.
Going to do it anyways. Lane Hutson's a good player. You can see that guy has all the offensive sense and talent that Montreal fans are excited by. I can see why he is racking up points even when he's, young in his defensive careers. The giveaways, the mistakes, it's all very familiar for talented defensemen who are thrust into bad teams, big minutes. That all makes sense. It was extremely funny to watch Lane Hutson give away 2 pucks directly to Red Wings players who then turned it into a goal. It was very hard to not start a fight with the entire province of Quebec online. I think the only reason it didn't happen is because Evan wasn't tweeting that day.
I couldn't do it.
You
If the Red Wings are the team scoring the 9 goals and winning both, then that's one thing. But man, it's tough to punch up when the Red Wings are putting on those performances.
Lane Hutson just gives the puck away. Patrick Kane ends up with the puck, makes a great move, snipes it. Excellent goal. Showtime goal. And we were all thinking, okay, they're in this. Montreal goes up 2-1 with a shorthanded goal because, of course, the power play has seemingly disappeared again, which is a recipe for failure if you're the Red Wings because your penalty kill is certainly not going to do it. So if your power play is not going to show up like it hasn't been, then that's terrible. Joe Veleno ends up tying the game. It's 2-2. It's actually a Dan Petrie shot from the point, which is just barely deflected by Veleno. Did I say Dan Petrie?
Yes.
That's staying in. That's staying in. I just said, oh my God. My brain's poisoned. Jeff Petrie, son of Dan Petrie, shot from the point, deflected in. Petrie again, we were laughing because it's like, oh yeah, there's another goal for Petrie, and it's gone again. Tyler Motte makes it 3-2. Another Lane Hutson terrible giveaway directly to Michael Rasmussen, who made a pro play back to Motte after taking that puck.
Genuinely, where the hell did that come from?
Rasmussen has been on his best form we've seen since his initial peak after they first moved him to wing, right?
He has these flashes where he turns into a dude. Like even at his, we'll call it baseline, he's an okay power forward. He can run a cycle. He can skate. He can throw the body around. He's never been a playmaker. That has never been a tool in his tool bag. For him to pull that out of his ass was truly astounding. It was the highlight of the weekend by a mile because not only was it good, not only was it fun, it was completely unexpected.
I'm not going to get too far down this road, but he's going to give some teams a big Tanner Jeannot vibes. I think the Detroit Red Wings get calls on Michael Rasmussen a lot. A big, massive energy guy who he shows up as sometimes and well-loved in the room and can throw down when he needs to kind of thing. I know Red Wings fans will be saying, well, we don't see that all the time. Doesn't quite matter. He has that reputation around the league, and the best version of Rasmussen is that, and he's showing offensive flair. I would be shocked if he's not one of the 3 most popular players that Steve Yzerman gets calls for, where it's not like an instant hang-up kind of thing.
It's one of those tricky thought experiments with trades because when he's on plays like that, you don't want to move him because you see the value. But you only see that about 15 games a year, so maybe the sell high thing might be might be the play here.
Although removing moral life from this team seems like a masochistic exercise.
In the big picture, though?
Again, not getting too far down this road. And that's all she wrote for the Red Wings that game. It wasn't a good game for Red Wings goaltending. Like Cam Talbot comes back in, it's a bad performance. And spoiler, Alex Lyon wasn't good in the next one either. Like it's just not a highlight weekend where the Red Wings goaltending has saved them like we saw elsewhere this year.
We don't need to go down the full Doomer rabbit hole, but the 3 very truly optimistic points of the season, and the reason the Red Wings were winning the games that they were winning was the Seider Edvinsson pairing was elite, the goaltending was excellent, and the power play was clicking. If all 3 of those things,
yeah, it's
I'm
not.
not even. I obviously there's a reason to laugh here, but if those 3 things, like if Edvinsson's out longer term, if the goaltending turns into a pumpkin at midnight and the power play can't get it going, like I'm not kidding. Hagens and Martone and Misa are very much on the table.
Oh, they absolutely are.
If you would have told me, though, that the Red Wings scored 3 5-on-5 goals against Montreal, I'd been great.
Yeah.
They won the game. Amazing.
You definitely get at least one power play tally in there, right? Against the Canadiens, too?
Yeah.
Nope. The other points of that game, just to add on to the doom, coming to this game, the Montreal Canadiens were on a 31-game streak without recording more than 30 shots on goal, which was tied for an NHL single-season record. They just dodged holding that record on their own with 32 games plus because they put up more than 30 shots on goal against the Red Wings. So
that stat I actually would have thought the Red Wings would have held.
No.
They're such a low shot volume team.
Yeah, but it takes something special to do it all season long. Like every team has a game where they just kind of figure it out or get a bunch on a power play or something.
Well, Montreal just had 2 of them.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I didn't know that stat. That is...
Yeah, it's bad. 0-4 on the power play for Detroit, but defense was bad as expected. Actually, before we move forward here, that play where the puck came up over the back of the net and landed on Montembeault,
I've never seen something like that.
that was weird.
There's been goals scored like that. There was a famous one, I think it was San Jose against Luongo in Vancouver. It was the same play, but it actually ended up going in.
Well, Pavel Datsyuk used to try to flip the puck over either off the goalie's back or to his teammate who had batted in. And then was it Zegras Terry who pulled it off in Anaheim? In
Yeah, but that was
Zegras'
just a
rookie
straight
season?
pass, whereas they didn't hit the goalie.
Right, yeah. So it landed on Montembeault. And that was an interesting situation because it landed on Montembeault's back. Montembeault, very impressed with him, leaned forward to let the puck just balance there. Like
Yeah,
he
and like
was
seal the crossbar with your back and then just kind of stand still.
Joga Benito, like, you know, Ronaldinho old YouTube soccer videos.
You could almost hear him go, get it off me, get it off me, get it off me.
And 2 Canadians actually covered the puck on the back of his jersey with their hands at the same time as the whistle was going. So there's a bit of confusion because if you freeze the puck, then in the crease, intentionally as a player, not a goalie, with your hand, that's a penalty shot. It wasn't called. There was a discussion on, is it because it wasn't directly on the ice, which is how you can interpret the rule book, or I think the league's actual explanation was, we didn't even get into that. It was because the whistle was being blown just as they were doing it. And so that's how the ref kind of stopped the situation from moving forward, which kind of similar to the Philly game where something weird happened. I look at that and I'm like, maybe that puck should have been frozen or the whistle should have gone a little bit earlier. So I kind of agree with the decision to just not go down that weird rules interpretation rabbit hole. Although I was watching it, I'm like, by the spirit of the rule, that should have been a penalty shot.
Well, I hope all the Red Wings fans living now in that timeline are having a great time and that they beat Montreal last night. And my gibbet is still in my crock.
The Mo Seider, Ben Chiarot, like I actually thought, you know, as far as things go, they did as much as you could hope for. Seider had that one play early on in the game where he saved a goal. Either him or Chiarot was out of position. I think it's because Seider was actually going off for a change before the break came, and so he came back, and so I think he, you know, was just trying to make the best out of a weird situation, trying to be in position, and ended up just barely saving a goal when Evans took too long with the puck. But all of that to say, like, it wasn't a good performance by the Red Wings, and it got worse after that. Because the next game, it was, you know, a moment where Joe Veleno scored. Amazing play by Berggren, who got himself back into the lineup, found Joe Veleno at the side of the net, who put it in front of his hometown crowd. His mom brought cookies to the team in that game, which is a nice little touch.
If someone told Joe Veleno every game was in Montreal, he'd be a 40-goal scorer.
In 40 games.
Like, I think I swear to God, like, I'm sure there's stats that don't back this up, but it feels like every time the Red Wings play in Montreal, Veleno's scoring.
He looks
You know what Montreal
motivated.
needs to do, right? They need to trade for Joe Veleno.
We'll take Michigan-born Lane Hutson off your hands.
That seems
Montreal.
fair, yes.
After that the game was what it was. It was Patrick Laine scoring. The dude cannot stop scoring. Scored a power play goal through Mo Seider's stick that he broke with the shot in the first game. Scored again on the power play in the next game. Broke Mo Seider's stick on a different shot in that game as well. So what a story that is. Like, very sad to say it's coming against the Red Wings. The end score is 5-1. Detroit's not getting support from Alex Lyon. Detroit's defense with William Lagesson coming up for his first game. Like, that whole decor just didn't look good at all. It was terrible. Terrible start to end.
This is a bad hockey team who look like a bad hockey team. I
Yep.
wish I could give more analysis than that, but look up and down this roster that's created. There's no depth scoring. And even in the game they got it on Friday, it didn't matter. There's one good defenseman playing with Edvinsson out. And if the goaltenders are regressing to anything below league average, even if it's close to league average, slightly below league average, this team is, I got to try to not use a lot of expletives here, screwed.
Yeah, like, if you're going to lose Simon Edvinsson like that, like, it would have taken a miracle for this to be a positive result for the Red Wings. It didn't have to be this bad against the Montreal Canadiens, but it goes to show what we've been saying for a long time now. Like, this defense is held up by an otherworldly performance all year from Seider and Edvinsson. So you take that away and you see how bad things really are. It's not like it's not actually a league average defense. Whatever metric you look at that says the totality of the defense is, around league average, that's a combination of the team being skewed heavily defensively in how they play because they have to, and Seider and Edvinsson carrying them, absolutely carrying them. Those two are phenomenal. Edvinsson goes out, and this season, if it wasn't already done before, it's done now.
I want to circle back to a couple conversations we had in the offseason, because I remember we got a lot of pushback on it, because I know I was big on the, hey, this team's offense isn't going to be what it was last year, and I know you were in the same boat on the defense, and we got a lot of pushback saying, well, what about DeBrincat? What about Larkin? What about Raymond? What about Edvinsson coming up? And they're all good, but depth. Look at the good teams. We have 3 of those forwards, 2 of those defense. The good teams have 9 of those forwards, 4 of this defense, minimum. Like, and I'm not saying they have to be Norris caliber or MVP caliber, but like above average players. When you don't have the depth, you are 1 cold streak, like Dylan Larkin not scoring a goal in 12 games. You are 1 injury, like Simon Edvinsson with whatever happened off of that hit, away from your season going in the absolute tank. There's nothing to make up for it when it happens. And it is completely unreasonable to expect a guy like Dylan Larkin to score 70 goals for guys playing the minutes and the matchups that Edvinsson and Seider are to go through an entire season completely healthy. You can't reasonably expect that. So when you're looking at the roster going, where the hell is all the depth? This is your result. This is the problem. This is what you're going to get. The Red Wings, and it's worth pointing out, outside of that 1 Larkin injury in March last year, were unreasonably lucky with injuries last year. And that is one of the reasons they were a hair away from making the playoffs, because Seider played all 82. Kasper played almost the whole season, and Raymond played the whole season. And it's just, that is not sustainable. Like, it's the NHL. Cold streaks happen, injuries happen. And the Red Wings had a good run of it last year. They're not having a great run of it this year. A lot of cold streaks, a lot of injuries, and this is the result.
The performance we're seeing right now, and like you see little bits here and there from the 2 games they put together before we recorded last episode where, the goaltending shows up and they get it together enough against a team that just doesn't show up. And they're good performances. We were right to be excited. But what we're seeing now, it's just what the team is. They're just not getting heroic goaltending. The goaltending has been poor the last little while to average. And you strip away, like Brad said, one of those core pieces, which any NHL team has to expect. You're going to lose a guy for 3-4 games that's important to you at some point, if not multiple guys, multiple times throughout the season. That's just how hockey is.
Look at Colorado this season. They've dressed, I think, almost 40 players this year.
It's not a surprise to see this. I have a friend, I've talked about him a couple of times on the show. He's more of a football guy, but he'll go to the games and he'll be like, hey, I want to take the Red Wings by 2 tonight. And I'm just like, please just send me
2 what?
2 goals. Like, he wants to win by 2 goals. And I was like, just send me the money instead, man.
Yeah. Put it aside. Just put that money in a savings account.
Yeah. And then he texts me after one of the Red Wings goals and says, you're an idiot. Montreal scored right after. He goes, oh my God, I'm an idiot. That's why there's no like big shock this episode. It's just an acknowledgement. And the fan base knows, as much as people are checking out because it's abysmal to watch, but the fan base knows this is what it is. This isn't some brand new revelation. I get admittedly a little frustrated when you get some like national media focuses on the entire league. And that's why I know why they don't know, but they come in and they're like, oh man, I think the Red Wings are maybe in a spot of trouble here. Like things are getting a little tough for Detroit. Is it time to sound the alarm bells? Meanwhile, the village is on fire. People are evacuating. Everyone's like shrieking into like it's been like this since October. None of this is new.
Just the goaltending and the power play aren't propping them up anymore.
And the goaltending and the power play will come back in spurts, and that's how the Red Wings will get their games here and there, and they'll have a little stretch at some point. But by and large, that's what this season is. And so when we had that episode recently, I think we titled it like Time to Tank. We didn't mean intentionally lose, but what we were acknowledging was this team knows what this season is at this point. Steve Yzerman is going to be looking to make a change probably in the roster, like a fundamental big change, because the aspects of this roster that are baked in long term, you can't keep coming back with all those. But all in all, you're not worried about this season's performance because it's just not going to be there no matter what you do realistically. So you're looking at the trade deadline and you're looking at maintaining whatever silver linings you can have from this year.
This year is two things now. And this is where I'm going to focus on the positives. I'm going to be that guy.
You said positives.
Positives, multiple.
Wow. It is Christmas.
Unbelievable.
This is the Christmas spirit coming out. It's not a long list. It's already
two. It's two.
One, we look at the Red Wings pipeline and we look at the roster and we go specifically at forward and we go, oh, this is bad, really bad. Well, this is a very top-heavy forward draft. So bottoming out and landing I don't think they're going to be in the Hagens territory, but if you get a Misa or a McQueen, well, that changes the outlook of this team pretty dramatically. Also, for as bad as this team has been, the guys we needed to be good have been good. Raymond looks like a revelation. Like he has taken another step. Seider and Edvinsson, we talked about a couple episodes ago about there's your top pair for the next 10 years, and they're at an elite level already. Kossa's dominating. So what this season can be now is, hey, let's get a look at what the future actually is on this team. Like, they're giving Kasper run. They're giving that top pairing run. Berggren had a real cold streak, but he's back in. It's like, it's going to crystallize what the future can be in a lot of ways, because is this guy a guy or not? Is this guy a guy or not? And then you can make decisions based off of that. I still think they need to throw a couple hand grenades into that room just to, for a culture shift, because...
You know who agrees is Buffalo. Just saying.
We talked about that, and I'm very on board with a lot of scenarios there.
We'll see where we're at post-freeze.
But either way, it's... If you can get a stud forward in this draft and you can have a realistic, accurate expectation of the future of this team based on what you're seeing this year, it really does cement whatever Yzerman's plan needs to be. Because last year might have been a negative in the sense that it gave this team false hope and that there's something they're not. They overperformed expectations. Maybe they thought they were closer than they actually were. Which, the regression this year sucks, but when the ultimate goal is the Stanley Cup, you can go, oh no, we need to make bigger moves and we need to do X, Y, and Z instead of A, B, and C. So that's the positive I'm going to take from the rest of the season is the guys that are key to the future this year have been good, and another high draft pick probably is still needed.
There's going to be plenty of conversation about that. I have more in my mind of you don't need to be buying out or mortgaging futures to trade away all of the bad contracts, but I do think you should be making space in one or two spots where you can. And I think that's for future conversations more so.
And also, I think, like I said, when I reference hand grenades in the room, do not mortgage futures.
Yeah. Unless
you are getting someone young. Like we talked about Cousins last episode, but a Cousins, a Byram, a Zegras. Yeah, they might be a little older than a prospect you trade or a pick you trade away, but they're young. There's a lot of runway there too. And, maybe you give up the maybe for the sure thing. I don't know, but something, please, anything needs to change that isn't mortgaging the future.
Where the Red Wings are at right now, they are second last in the East. Only the God. Buffalo Sabres, who are on 12 plus games of losing, 0-8-2 in their last 10, and it goes beyond that. So they actually got passed by the Montreal Canadiens. So they are firmly in lottery territory. They are now 8 points out of the second wildcard spot, held by the Ottawa Senators and Linus Ullmark, who's been on fire. So that separation that we said hasn't been there all season, it's starting to show up, which I actually think is a blessing because Red Wings fans who have watched this team knew. This is not the same Red Wings from last year where, things were working out, and even though it wasn't a great team, they could have made a case for sneaking in. This team, if they snuck into the playoffs, it would have been a train wreck. And there's just no way it was going to happen. So that separation is there, and it reinforces what we know about the season that Brad just laid out. We need to do a little bit of reverse jinxing, though, because even if the Red Wings are going to continue to have, this kind of season, Dylan Larkin's 12 games without a goal. And the last time we acknowledged that Dylan Larkin was on a little bit of a cold spell, he came out and just made us shut up really fast. So I think we acknowledge that Dylan Larkin, he's had his moments passing to Lucas Raymond or something, but it's not looked like Dylan Larkin. Maybe we need to talk about that for a half second here so that he's inevitably going to come out and score like 3-4 goals over his next 2 games or something, because that's just how it goes on this show.
Yeah, anyone we bring into question their ability goes on a heater for a moment in time. So if there's any time to reverse jinx Dylan Larkin, now is the time.
Not anyone, because we've been saying that about the depth and the defense behind Seider and Edvinsson, and that hasn't exactly.
We can only do so much.
Our powers. This is just a podcast at the end of the day.
Yes.
We have to unlock talent that is actually there.
Yeah. So the big conversation is coming up, but that is, I think, better saved for future episodes. What we're going to do now is go to break, and after we get back, you're going to hear from Bob Kaser, voice of the Grand Rapids Griffins, where the positivity is really going to come in because he has a lot of really great insight into the Grand Rapids Griffins, Nate Danielson, Amadeus Lombardi, the Kaspers and the Berggrens and all the players the Red Wings have seen and are excited to see. Really fantastic and refreshing to get that insight. So a break to hear from the sponsors of the Winged Wheel podcast and Bob Kaser after this. This episode of the Winged Wheel podcast is proudly brought to you by Labatt Blue Light. Created in 1983, this premium light Canadian Pilsner is a delicately balanced beer brewed with Cascade hops and a blend of malt. It's fresh, crisp, and brewed to the highest quality standards. There's a little bit of Canadian kindness in every sip of Labatt Blue Light. How did it get in there? They're Canadian. That's how. You can spread the love yourself by sharing a Labatt. And when you do share a Labatt, you're not just sharing a beer. You're sharing an experience that'll pair with anything from hockey to a hoedown. So next time you're watching hockey with your buds, be sure to share a Labatt, because while you might not all root for the same team, although we on this podcast do hope you're rooting for Detroit, you can all enjoy a Labatt Blue Light. We honestly love going to games in Detroit and seeing Labatt being the beer that fans clamor for all over the arena. It's a reliable beer, and it's great to have in your hand when celebrating a goal. So head to the link in the description of this episode or the one you see on your screen to find Labatt in stores near you today. You must be 21 or older, and as always, enjoy responsibly. Well, we had to hit record at some point, but it will come as no surprise to the listeners that Bob Kaser does indeed love to talk hockey. For the first time on the Winged Wheel podcast, we are so overdue to do this. Welcome, Bob Kaser, lead play-by-play broadcaster on TV and radio for the Grand Rapids Griffins, a voice and a face I hope that will be familiar to all of you. Bob, welcome to the show.
It's great to be with you guys, and I hope by the end of this that people don't look back and go, now we know why they haven't had him on all this time. So it's great to be with you guys.
We set the bar extraordinarily low, and that's just because Brad is exceptionally short. And those are the pot shots we can take at him when he doesn't show up to these. So you're on the road right now, Bob, with the Griffins, and it has been one wild ride. I don't want to say even of a season, of a couple seasons now with the Griffins. Massive change in the organization coming down from the Red Wings, and the wealth of prospects coming through, and not just prospects, but experienced guys. What has the last kind of 18 to 24 months been like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's always a blast, guys. I mean, being in this industry is a blessing and has been for me for a long, long time. But, having grown up in Michigan and a Red Wing fan through and through, you almost take it, personally when, some of the prospects are going up, or maybe some of the prospects have not reached Detroit yet, and, producing and helping get that team going in the right direction. It's, disappointing from that standpoint, because, we look at all the young guys down here as, most of them as future prospects and guys that are going to eventually wear the winged wheel and lead them to great things and get back to their winning ways. And, I think we all kind of, feel the pain of these last several years, and we take it, like I say, we take it personally down in Grand Rapids, because it's our job to develop these young guys and eventually assist with the Wings development and return to prominence. So, it's still fun. It's always fun to, to get these guys, you watch the Wings draft, and then eventually a year or two later, they're in a Griffins uniform, and you get to see firsthand what you've been hearing about. And then you watch them and you think, okay, this guy's going to make it. This guy, kind of a question mark. I think we've been kind of spot on with a lot of them. But you feel for the guys that don't get there, because, you know how hard they work to get just to this level. there's a lot of emotion that goes into working in the American Hockey League, and we want to win in Grand Rapids, but we also understand our role is to develop players to eventually help the Detroit Red Wings win. And when you lose guys like Edvinsson and so many others along the way, it's tough, but we're also at the same time just thrilled beyond words to see these guys to live out their dream of eventually playing in the NHL. And that's the great part of what we get to do in Grand Rapids, is watch these guys work their way up the ladder, and they're one step away, and a lot of them are knocking on that door again as we speak, and looking forward to seeing many more play for Detroit here down the road.
Well, I think the primary example of that everyone's thinking about right now is a guy who left you for a brief little stint, got his first NHL win, and came back. What was the transition like for Sebastian Cossa? Because he's been phenomenal in his development over the past couple seasons, but from before he left for Detroit and then when he came back, was there a change in the kind of aura or emotion around how the team and the fan base saw their lead goaltender? Well,
there's no doubt, Ryan, that there was a glow about him when he got back. I mean, he was beyond words, in terms of, that experience that he had that week that he had in Detroit. And I think it came a little sooner than he was expecting it to be honest with you. And, I think he understands that he's probably a good couple of years away, or not, I shouldn't say a good couple of years away. He's 2 years into a year and a half into his stint in the American Hockey League, and knows that most goalies are a couple of years before they graduate. Jimmy Howard was 4 years with the Grand Rapids Griffins. So, but he was tickled beyond words, to have that opportunity to then get to play, and then win a game the way he did. And genuinely, he made those comments about, he thought it was the perfect way to end it, a shootout. He loves the one-on-one. And in fact, his first game back here was a shootout, and we wound up winning it because he made a couple of spectacular saves. So, but I didn't notice a lot other than the glow, and naturally he's going to be feeling pretty darn good about, just even if he hadn't have played. I mean, coming back here and experiencing what it's like in the NHL and be around those guys, around that environment I know I've been up there a few times, fortunate to fill in for Ken Cal. Just from my perspective, it's a pretty impressive thing when you're in the National Hockey League, and gosh, I can't even imagine as a player and in Cossa's case, to get that chance to go up and then actually play a game and come from behind and win. He was. They were telling him that they might put his jersey in the Hall of Fame. I don't know if that's going to happen, because he was the first ever rookie to come in as a replacement, as a fill-in, and come in the middle of a game and actually see the team come back and win. So I think that's the first one ever, right? So if that's the case, then it sounds like his jersey might go into the Hockey Hall of Fame. And he was pretty fired up about the prospects of that happening.
It's such a surreal thing to think that you're going to play your first NHL game, and that first game, something historic happens. Like, that happens for such few players to ever come through the game. It's truly incredible. I wanted to ask you, Bob, about the difference between the Grand Rapids Griffins of last year and this year. Obviously, Grand Rapids, they started off slow last year, but really came together, had a deep playoff run. There's a lot of turnover this year. They don't have Berggren, they don't have Hirose anymore. Kasper's up with the Red Wings. Just wondering what differences you see between the two teams, because this team's feisty. Like, they've had quite a few fighting majors. Maybe Austin Watson is partially to help in that category. But what are the two differences you've seen between the two teams?
Well, you mentioned Austin Watson. That's a big difference right there. His influence has been unbelievable, and and not just on the team as a whole, but on a guy like Elmer Soderblom. I mean, Soderblom is a guy who you guys know. I mean, he's trying to work his way back to the NHL, and I think he's a guy that's 6'8", 250 pounds that sometimes is afraid to hit people because he didn't want to hurt him. Well, I think Austin Watson has convinced him that, that's going to be a part of part of that path back to the NHL is use that size, because in the NHL, as you guys know, most of the guys are, on average another inch, taller and 15 pounds heavier. So, you're going to need to play that way up top. So, but Austin Watson's been a tremendous leader for us in that locker room. I don't know what we would do without him, to be honest with you. I mean, we've got some great leadership. We're a good team with or without him, but he's made a difference in this club for sure. We've got some terrific young veteran guys, I guess, in a sense. I mean, oxymoron, if you will, but Sheldon Dries is still pretty young, as is Joe Snively. These guys are great American Hockey League players, and, they've made a big difference, real pros off the ice as well. So, much like last year, Dan Watson did a great job with this team last year, stayed the course. Like you said, we had a tough start, but the team was really good down the stretch, and I think we had as good a chance as anybody to win the Calder Cup last year, but Milwaukee got in the way of us. But I guess in a way, really the thing that's been most surprising, guys, is the fact that we're 16-8. I mean, and I say that only because we've been missing Maroc Kasper from day one. We've been missing Carter Mazur, hurt in the first period of the third game of the year. Now we're minus, Amadeus Lombardi. Those are three of our best, if not our best, offensive players. Without them, we're still 16-8. Imagine if we get a couple of them back, and it sounds like Mazur's going to be back fairly soon. So it's been fun. I mean, we're extremely well coached. We're very disciplined. We've got great leadership with Austin Watson joining us, along with Josiah Didier, and just really, really impressed with this team, both on and off the ice so far.
I wanted to before we get into the big players who we'll definitely see in the wing wheel at some point, I really want to touch on Dominic Schein. He's been with the Grand Rapids Griffins for 7 years now. He kind of flies under the radar. Maybe you can talk about him just a little bit.
I'm glad you brought him up, Evan. I mean, it's funny you mentioned that, because I literally asked, Coach Watson about a week or 2 weeks ago. I said, would there be a chance that they, if nothing else, give him one game in the National Hockey League? And I think that one could potentially turn into multiples. Now, whether it's with the Detroit Red Wings or somebody else would have to be, remain to be seen, but he's earned that. I mean, he's the ultimate great guy, hardest worker you're going to find anywhere. He's, I think compared to when he was first here 7 years ago to where he is now, not only is he a gritty, hardworking, all about the team kind of guy, but he's developed into a really good player. He's our leading scorer right now. If someone would have said that to me 5 years ago, that Dominic Schein somewhere down the road would be your leading scorer, no chance. But boy, he's worked his tail off and become just a really, really good American League player. And I would love to see him, get a chance to play in the NHL.
Yeah, not that we have any pull whatsoever, but Dominic Schein has played 447 games in the AHL. So if there's anyone who deserves at least one on his stat sheet, it would probably be him.
Completely agree, Evan. I'm glad you brought it up.
We've mentioned Dan Watson a couple times, and we were actually talking about Coach Dan Watson before we hit record here. And part of the massive turnaround, you have to admit, no matter what your opinion is on these prospects, is what Dan Watson has come in and done. And this was a step for him as well. This was a new venture for him. It was a progression in his career. What have you seen in terms of the makeup of the locker room, the attitude of the team, and the culture that Dan Watson has instilled? And I guess the systems on the ice, but you only have to talk to the guy once to know that he brings that presence with him.
Yeah, just very relaxed, and he picks his spots. In fact, I was talking to him earlier today at practice that, we were talking about William Verlinder and how physical he played on Saturday. And the reason for that was, as I heard from others, that Dan Watson lit him up pretty good at the end of the, first period or second period, even post game on Friday night in the first two games against Colorado. We were not a very physical team, and we wound up losing the game, and, Colorado manhandled us. And so I think Dan more or less called out the whole team, and we need to be more physical. This is a tough building to play in, and it is. It's and it's only a 7,000 seat arena, but they pack it every night, and their fans are into it big time. And the team feeds off of that, and we didn't respond to it very well Friday. Well, we were a much better team Saturday, and I think that's the Dan Watson influence. He's just very, not that often does he need to jump on the guys because they automatically play hard for him. He's just a very likable. He's a coach, player's coach, as they say. I remember Jeff Blashill saying once upon a time, "What does that mean? How am I a player's coach?" And he almost took it as offensive, but certainly it was never meant to be that way, nor will it ever. I mean, to me, a player's coach is a guy that is doing a great job and has got the players' attention, and Dan Watson clearly has all of that.
So there's so many prospects that fans and listeners are going to want to hear about how they're doing in Grand Rapids, but what's your take on the two big names that are in Detroit right now? Unsurprisingly, we saw their progression, and even though Kasper took a few games there, he's up too. But with Simon Edvinsson and Maroc Kasper, based on what you saw and how they grew in the Griffins uniform, what do the Red Wings have on their hands?
Well, Kasper is going to be really good. I mean, we saw that during the second half of the year, and I think when you guys were down in Grand Rapids too, Ryan, I remember talking with some of you guys about just how impressed you were with him. Well, by that time, he had really blossomed into a really, really good American League player already at such a young age, and everybody talks about him being a two-way guy, and that's probably where he's going to make his money in the NHL as a two-way guy, and that's a good thing. But I think he's got more offense to give. I think he's, I think there's no reason to think he can't score 20 goals. And the reason I say that is, he's got a lot of skill, but we saw the way he developed it, during the second half of last year. He was our best player in the last month and then into the playoffs. I mean, and that's saying something because he was young and we had a lot of talent on that team, but he was our best player night in and night out. His progression was incredible. If he does that same thing and progresses at the NHL level as quickly as he did here, there's no reason to think he can't be a 20 to 25 goal guy, and 50, 60 points, 70, who knows, but he's going to be really good. And Edvinsson, we drooled over him for a couple of years. We kept telling everybody that he's going to be a National Hockey League All-Star, and I still maintain that. I think he's just got so much upside, and you'll see him progress too. I mean, just like it took him a while here, a lot of those young mistakes. That's why they start in Grand Rapids, and then they get to the NHL, and some of those same mistakes are going to rear their ugly head just because of the speed and getting accustomed to that. But boy, Simon Edvinsson has all the tools, and there's no question that I think he's going to be a star in the National Hockey League.
One name that we can't forget about, Bob, is Jonatan Berggren. And to me, Red Wings fans have watched him as he's developed, and especially in his time with Grand Rapids. But I think about last year's Wing Wheel podcast night, and I was talking to him, and this is a guy with all of the tenacity and all the confidence in the world. And just first off, he's a great demonstration of the skill jump when you get to the NHL, because even a guy as skilled as Berggren, he doesn't come out and score 100 points right away. But what do you see in Berggren in his game and the fact that he's been able to grab hold of a roster spot this year? Like, what do you think he's able to do at the NHL level based on what you saw in the AHL?
Yeah, probably no question he would have. And I think even in the past, some of the coaches have talked about, Berggren was an NHL talent, but just there wasn't a spot for him, within the Wings. I mean, we felt all along that he could be an NHL player if he were in a different organization, but it would take more time with Detroit. And then even then, he still had a lot to work on, the two-way game, as they talk about, playing a little more physical, cutting down on mistakes. Power plays, the occasional bad pass that, in our league, more times than not, you get away with it, but up there you're not. So, just those little tweaks that needed to be made in his game. And again, I'm no expert, when it comes to the X's and the O's to tell you he needed to work on this or that, or I shared a couple of things, but it was just a matter of time for him. I still think he can be a contributor at the National Hockey League level, points wise. And, it's obviously a tough situation right now, and the Wings. It'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see where he goes. But again, I'm confident in him. I think all of us in Grand Rapids who saw him play enough feel like no reason he can't be even as high as a second line guy. I mean, he's got that much skill. So hopefully we're rooting for him. I can tell you that much.
I don't think we can delay talking about Nate Danielson any longer. I can hear some of our listeners just punching me and Ryan to get to this. Obviously, Nate had a very short stint last year, 2 games in the playoffs for Grand Rapids. How's he looked through the first 25 so far?
Well, I did an interview with him on Saturday. My first question to him was, what am I to read into the fact that you have 12 points in your last 12 games? And I just put him on the spot, and he just basically the response you would expect. He's very confident in his own abilities, and that's pretty much what he told me. He just said, I feel really good in this league right now. I'm starting to figure it out, and I've got and he quickly pointed the fingers towards teammates, and not just on the ice but off. I mean, just the leadership of guys that are just bringing him along, and then that's a big part of the American Hockey League too. It's not just the off ice or on ice, it's the off ice, and that's why some of the better teams in the National Hockey League, they understand the importance of having guys that are going to be mentors to these young players. And we've been blessed with that in Grand Rapids. And I think that they help immensely with that progression of players to get there. And Danielson is no exception. He's a smart kid. He's a multi-talented kid. He's a tremendous amount of skill. And watching him now, it's amazing how far he's come in just a couple of months. And even though he didn't get a point on Saturday in Colorado, he scored the third round shootout goal that won it for us. So that was bigger than any point he might have had during the 65 minutes of the game in overtime. So yeah, he's going to be a good one, no doubt. And Red Wing fans should be extremely excited about Nate Danielson.
Last year we watched Maroc Kasper just take a month or two there to kind of get his feet under him, and then he just went, and Maroc Kasper didn't slow down. Do you see kind of an analogous path here with Nate Danielson? Same progression? What kind of timeline do you think we're working with, without tying him, of course, to anything?
Yeah, maybe a little quicker, Ryan, to be honest with you. I mean, I thought Kasper was really good last year, like I say, and it wasn't until probably month 3, maybe even month 4 before, he really became a very highly noticeable player every game in and game out. But along the way, those first few months, you can see the skills of these kids. I mean, it's just playing consistently is where you want to get them to, playing consistently, hard and good every night. And that's what Kasper did. Starting in, probably January or February at the very latest is when he was a guy that just you knew was starting to dominate the American Hockey League, and he was doing it night in and night out. Danielson is starting to do that now, maybe a month or 6 weeks, maybe a couple of months, ahead of where Kasper was. I wouldn't read a ton into that, but, end of the day, there's no doubt Nate Danielson's on the same path, I think, as Maroc Kasper. It won't be very long before he's in the Red Wing lineup.
Another guy we obviously wanted to hit on was Amadeus Lombardi. Last year, from a counting stats perspective, it wasn't all that impressive. But this year, he's just absolutely popped off. What have you seen over the past 2 seasons of Amadeus Lombardi?
Yeah, the thing with him, Evan, is, we kind of use this as a way to, share with you just kind of where he's come this year versus last year. Last year you'd ask a fan or anybody that was at a game, who were the players that stood out to you? And it was almost always Amadeus Lombardi last year. But then at the end of the day, you look at his stats and he really didn't have much. He had no finish. And, and again, getting adjusted to this level of play. Here's a guy that came out of junior with 100 points, right? And, he wound up with 20, I think, last year, 5 goals, in his rookie campaign. And that wasn't a huge disappointment. I know for him it was frustrating because he's used to all these points. And, but he was always very noticeable last year. And yet the points just weren't coming. Well, now he comes back, he's bigger, he's stronger, and he is clearly a lot more confident. And all those skills that we saw last year that didn't result in points are now starting to. He's finishing plays, he's making great passes, he's not afraid to shoot the puck. He's got double the goals already this year than he had all of last year in 70 games. So, there's a lot of great signs with Amadeus. He is an exciting player to watch. He's a jitterbug out there, and he is definitely coming along really quickly now. And I don't think there's any question he's back on that Red Wing radar. Not that he ever dropped off of it, but he's got to be on that radar again. I mean, he's just highly, highly skilled for sure, and really, really fun to watch.
Speaking of a guy who's on a radar, and I think we just said, I think I've said every episode for the last 5 episodes, it's such a shame about Carter Mazur and the injury, the upper body injury he has. And, there's never a good time to have a long-term injury, of course, but this year everyone was looking for Carter to be the kind of spark plug who would come in when the team needed it. We think he's NHL ready, at least to kind of get his cup of tea and see where he's at. What do you see with Carter as a player outside of the injury, and what can Red Wings fans expect when he comes back? Because I don't think this guy's going to take long to be knocking on the door again once he's healthy.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ryan. He's just got NHL written all over him, in my estimation, and most others that I talk to, scouts around the NHL that are at all of our games, home and away, and everybody just raves about him. I'll tell you, the one thing that it holds true with a lot of these young players on our team is every one of them still has work to do in the gym. They've got William Valinder's another one. They got to get bigger and stronger because like we say, yeah, this is a tough league. It's, highly physical. They're big boys. Lombardi, that, part of his issue last year was he was so small, and competing against these men that are, 24, 25, 30 years old was a challenge for him. But he came back bigger and stronger. There's no question that is not overrated. Adding another 5 to 10 pounds and, just some more muscle is going to be key for a lot of these guys. And Maser falls into that category. Valinder's in that category. Danielson, Lombardi, all of them still need to get bigger. And then so Maser is, working on that upper body, although that, is the injury that he suffered, unfortunately. So that's going to kind of slow up that process. But, he has been skating now for the last month or so. And I think fairly soon he's going to be practicing with the team, limited contact. But it sounds like he could be back within, we hope, a month or so, maybe a little longer. But I think it's sooner than what a lot of people had expected. So hopefully we can get at least a good couple of months of regular season out of him and a nice playoff run. But yeah, you're going to love him. He's gritty. He's fearless. To me, he's kind of an old school hockey player, old right winger. It's not that big, but he's going to stick his nose in everywhere. He's going to yap and he's going to stir it up. And I think he's going to be a really good NHL player and fun and a fun guy to have on your team, not on the other team.
We've had Carter Maser, I think, twice now on the podcast. And the first time we had him on, everyone always draws up the comparisons between him and Tyler Bertuzzi. And he was very confident to say, yeah, that's great, but I'm going to be Carter Maser. And just the confidence he has in himself is just so good to see. And he'll certainly be a fan favorite when he makes it to Detroit. The other guy I wanted to touch on really quickly, new guy to the team is Shai Buium, obviously coming off a national championship, comes into the Grand Rapids Griffins. What have you seen of his game and him as a person so far?
Well, just a little side note, I think I kind of upset Shai Buium yesterday when we were flying to Austin, Texas. Well, because I'd been telling him, I said, I can't wait to meet your brother Zeev. I've just heard about Zeev.
Oh my
God. Course, I think it was the first time I said that to him. The next night he scored 3 goals for, University of Denver. I mean, he's going to be a great player, Zeev Buium, 12th pick overall by Minnesota. Well, sure enough, at the airport in Colorado yesterday, Zeev came out to say goodbye to Shai because Zeev was heading to Detroit as part of the World Junior, USA World Junior team practices. So I got to meet him and I was like a 10-year-old kid meeting Gordie Howe funny. Back in the day, I was like, oh, Zeev, and it just, kind of shoved Shai aside. But no, Shai, they are awesome. What a great family. Shai is just a terrific kid. He's got a lot of skill too. He's a different player than his brother, not as offensive minded, obviously, but he can score, and he's just looks to be a really solid professional defenseman, and a lot to learn. He's I'm guessing at least, and I'm no expert, I'm no Yzerman, I'm not going to make that decision, but it looks like he's going to be a couple years away. But no question, lots of upside with Shai Buium. So and he's a winner. I mean, you can tell he was part of that Denver team that won it all last year, and that's by no accident. He's got winning thing going on in that head of his for sure.
We could sit here and rattle off every Griffins player, and I'm sure we could. It's such a fantastic organization, especially how it's built right now. But for the sake of your time, because again, you're on a road trip right now, who are some of the Griffins players who you think don't get as much attention just because there's so many, powerhouse names like the Danielsons and the Masers, et cetera? Who are the guys who should be on Red Wings fans' radars for they could do this?
That's a great question. Ryan, I think probably William Valinder for sure. I would say right now he might be the number one prospect defensively right now, and again, needs to get a little bit bigger, but he's got NHL skill for sure. I thought was really impressive Saturday in Colorado. I know he specifically was somewhat called out, for just not playing as physical enough. And boy, he responded Saturday in Colorado and he laid the body on some guys. That was impressive just to see. Another guy too, we're all rooting for him. I know you guys are too. Elmer Soderblom. Don't lose sight of him. He has been, and this is where a guy like Austin Watson's made a big difference. Watson's playing on his line, and he holds him accountable. Elmer last year, one of the problems he had was his consistency. Playing hard every night and then throwing that body around, which again, like I said, he's somewhat reluctant to do it because he's so big and, he can hurt people. And I think he's fearful of that. But boy, he's played a much more physical role this year. He's been a force physically, and he's playing really well, playing hard every night. He's getting scoring chances. Goals have been really hard to come by, but they're going to happen. It's like I mentioned to him the other day. In my mind, you're a 3-game goal scoring streak away from getting called up to Detroit because he's playing well enough to get back up there. Now you got to show you got some touch and some finish because that's obviously something the Red Wings can use is some goal scoring. And he's playing well enough to get back there now. Just get some offense going, get some numbers on paper, and I think he'll be back in the mix again.
Okay, I'd be remiss in not mentioning what's happening Saturday, January 18th. It's our second go-around of Winged Wheel Podcast Night in partnership with the Grand Rapids Griffins, which, excitingly, of course, happens at Van Andel Arena. So griffinshockey.com/WWP. You get your tickets. You can also grab one of these hats. It's Griffins branded, as well as Winged Wheel Podcast co-branded. These are fantastic. We saw the winner himself, Sebastian Cossa, modeling them. So be sure to grab those tickets. I was chatting with the team today, and they said, we're running out of space real fast here. So if you want your tickets, go grab them. And Bob, I'm sure we're going to do something there as well. But I wanted to talk, like last year at our game there, we weren't surprised, and yet we were still surprised. Like the energy in the atmosphere in Grand Rapids at Van Andel Arena, like I think that is one of the best barns that I've ever seen a game at. And the excitement of the fan, like that doesn't feel like a fan base that just feels like, oh yeah, this is a feeder team for the Red Wings. Like those are Griffins fans. What an experience that was.
Yeah, it's funny. It's a great hockey town. And they're very knowledgeable, but they're also lively, especially on Friday nights. We introduced the $1 beer, $1 dog, and eventually $2 beer and $2 dog. But and then we cranked up the music and just created a terrific. I mean, not that it wasn't a great atmosphere before, but it is. It's one of the best places in our league. I mean, Colorado, like I said, is kind of reminded me a little bit of our building. That place, all of our guys were just they were like, that's the kind of atmosphere where you love to play in, and that's why a lot of people want to come to Grand Rapids. A lot of guys want to come to Grand Rapids and play hockey for the Griffins, veterans and young guys alike. So it's a great building. It's obviously being a part of the Red Wings, and we have an amazing operation starting with our ownership, Dan DeVos and Dave Van Andel. They hire the people that they know can do the job for them and make it the success story that it has been. And I'm surrounded by nothing but just tremendous people in our front office, and from a business side to the hockey ops side, we're in a really good position, no question. Certainly help we win a couple Calder Cups. Wouldn't mind getting another one here. We're about 7 years overdue for another one. So, we're win or lose. Our fans love the Griffins, and they love being a part of the excitement that is Griffins hockey at Van Andel Arena.
Well, speaking of your time there, people think of Ken and Mick in Detroit and, prolific pound for pound, I think the best broadcasting group in the NHL.
100%.
You and Larry in Grand Rapids. So you've been doing this for, 25 years now?
25 for the two of us, yeah. Yeah, I remember moving to Grand Rapids back in 2000, and one of the first things I did was had lunch with Larry Figursky at the suggestion of Randy Cleves, our PR guy, and Larry was a TV sports anchor at that time and was until a couple of years ago, but we just hit it off, and you could tell that Larry was not only loved the game, played the game of hockey, but he's passionate about the Griffins, and you can hear that. You listen to him, and you can tell that is a fan with a microphone in front of his mouth, much like me. So we've had a blast together. He's a dear friend, and we've both been through hard issues together, and that's I think bonded us even more than we were before. So yeah, we're fortunate. We like to think that we're in the mix there with having as a good a broadcast crew in our league as Red Wings have in the National Hockey League. And I agree with you guys 100%. I mean, Ken Daniels, how does he get it? So spoiled are we to be able to watch and listen to those two for all these years. I grew up on Bruce Martin, and I told Ken Cal, I said, those are tough shoes to fill, but man, not only have you done it, but you're right there with Bruce Martin in terms of, in my mind anyway, for play-by-play. So, and great people on top of that, which you guys know.
So you've actually had the opportunity to cover a few of the Red Wings games over your career. I think you did a few in 2016, and then you also covered the Global Series in Stockholm. Any fond memories about calling some of those games?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Here's how much it means to me, guys. I've told the Red Wings that, anytime you need me, I'm going to drop everything I'm doing. It doesn't matter. And I've shared that with the Griffins, and they don't blame me. They know how big a deal that is to me, growing up a Red Wing fan. And, broadcasting is my first love. It always has been. And to think of being a play-by-play guy in the National Hockey League, whether it's for one game or 6 games or 20 like last year. I mean, I hate that it's at the expense of Ken Callan's health on a couple of occasions, but thank goodness Kenny's doing great now. And but I'm there for them whenever they need me. And gosh, I get to do the Western Canada trip last year, and and then the Sweden trip to Stockholm. I did the whole California swing. And by the way, when we went 3-0, the coaches were all over me. They said, "Bob, we can't win." I think there was a stretch where like 3 or 4 games that I did last year, and we lost them all. And some Tanguay and those guys were all over me. And then I got on the bus after the 3rd game out in California when we won. I think it was in Anaheim, and I got on the bus. The coaches were up front, and I said, "You guys can't send me down now. Like, it's what do you think of me now? Like, you can't win without me." So,
just like the players.
Yeah, you got to have some fun with that. But yeah, what an experience! You know what, guys, I can't even describe to you what that means to me personally to get that call. I mean, it's incredibly flattering. And I remember my first game in Montreal back in, I think it was 17, Saturday night, the Bell Center in Montreal, original 6, Red Wings and Canadiens. Bob Cole's underneath me in the TV booth below. During the anthem there, I'm looking around, and it was the most surreal experience I've had in my entire life, because I was thinking to myself, I'm getting ready to be the voice of the Detroit Red Wings against the Montreal Canadiens on a Saturday night at the Bell Center. Like, oh my gosh, that to me was very surreal. So what an opportunity. And I can't thank the Wings and the fans enough for making me feel comfortable in doing that, because those are big shoes to fill.
Well, Bob, it's been a pleasure. I feel like if you let us ask all the questions we want to ask you, we're going to take us all the way up to January 18th. So I'll give you a break here, but we're very excited for 1 month from now to do this in person and to talk some more. So folks, Bob Kaser, Grand Rapids Griffins, thank you so much for your time, Bob.
My pleasure, Ryan. Look forward to seeing you guys next month. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Have a great Christmas. Welcome back. That was our conversation with Bob Kaser. Really, really excellent insights into the Griffins. And Evan and I selfishly made some golf plans. So excited to get out to Grand Rapids to damage some fairways.
It's always a good day when I can figure out some rounds of golf to play for next season.
That's right. Some quick notes before we jump into NHL news and overtime. I first want to acknowledge John Keating announced that this is his last season. The Red Wings season is going to mark the end of his TV career. John Keating, obviously a legend on and off screen, but Red Wings fans and Tigers fans have been extremely blessed to have him as part of the broadcast. So congratulations to you, Keats, on an incredible career. You're going to be missed, and hopefully this season goes out with a bang for you. So again, massive congratulations and acknowledgement to John Keating. The Red Wings prospects in the World Juniors, as we look forward to that after Christmas, is all set. So that's Trey Augustine leading in net for Team USA. Max Plant makes the team, coming back from injury, barely, added to the roster in time, and ends up making Team USA. So really great news as far as Red Wings fans are concerned. That's been an exciting pick since the moment he was drafted, just marred by an injury in the middle there, but nevertheless still an impactful player.
He's been on a heater since he came back from that injury in the NCAA too, which is huge as a freshman. And I'm curious to see how the USA uses him for the tournament, because, well, we knew Augustine was going to be on this team for about 2 years now. I mean, he won gold as a starter last year, and Augustine might actually be the best player in this tournament. Full stop.
Yeah.
And there's another Red Wings prospect who we'll talk about that could be in that conversation as well. But the U.S. doesn't have the greatest depth scoring in this tournament, so I wouldn't be shocked if Plant gets some power play 2 time out of this.
And we say like his ability as a playmaker and a passer is what is a standout, almost elite ability of his if you're going to isolate one. And so that would be really fun to see. So all eyes on Team USA for that reason. And Team Finland has Jesse Kiskinen which is like he's in the acquisition in the trade with Nashville with Gibson. We're not going to talk about what happened after that. He's been an exciting prospect since then. So that is another Red Wings prospect for you to watch out for at the World Juniors.
He's wearing an A for Finland, so odds are he'll be playing a decent role with them.
And like you said, potential best player in the tournament. If it's not Augustine, then it's
possibly Axel Sandin-Pellikka, won defenseman of the tournament last year and is back for one more go-around. The dynamic on Sweden could be really interesting too, because they have the three-headed monster on D. Hey, could be a pretty few things to come in Detroit, but between Willander and Lindstein and Sandin-Pellikka, they're going to get relied on heavily to carry that Swedish team, because the Swedes are not going to be a high-scoring team. A lot of their offense might actually come from the blue line, which ASP will be on the forefront of that. So, and of all the teams contending, most experts agree this is a three-horse race between Canada, the US, and Sweden for the gold. And Sweden's blue line would be the biggest reason if they have a chance. And again, ASP is going to be the front runner on that.
excited to watch. Fun post-holiday traditions, and thank goodness for other important hockey for Red Wings fans to keep tabs on. More on the Red Wings very quickly here before we jump into NHL news. A big topic of conversation is, okay, there's a roster freeze, and we alluded to this before, but is there a change coming this season, not in the player space? Because we talk about the need for a trade, but in terms of things that are going well, the heat's on the coaching staff too. And we've made like no kind of allusions to anything other than the fact that it's not just the roster and the roster that the management has put together. It's the execution and the preparedness and things that fall under the coaching staff as well that have gone poorly this season. So, you know, a lot can change over the course of a whole season, but that's that. It feels like if it wasn't already at a boiling point, or it was before, it certainly is again.
It's hard to fault the coaching staff for what's happened this season. Again, we talked about all the roster issues already. It's hard to praise them at the same time. The power play has been atrocious lately. The PK has been atrocious all season. The 5-on-5 defense has actually held up better than probably should have reasonably been expected of this group. So that's a credit to them at least. But again, even with the coaching, my mindset circles back to don't make a change for the sake of making a change. Make it for the betterment of the future. If there's a coach out there that you're like, I think this guy can lead us to the promised ground, make the change. Doesn't matter if you do that now or in the off season, make the change. He might get scooped up by the time you decide to make up your mind. If you don't see that guy out there, then I don't see the harm in running with Lalonde the rest of the year.
Tank.
I mean, if they fired Lalonde and promoted one of Tanguay or Bugner to be like an interim for the rest of the season, do you think it gets better? I don't. So if the goal is, hey, we want James Hagens, okay, then maybe. But yeah, I don't think Lalonde's the guy of the future. Like, I have a hard time seeing it with the way things have gone, but I also have a real hard time pinning the majority of the blame on him at the same point.
There's like, I think that point of with how things have gone, it's really hard to see the way out for Lalonde. There's so many cases of coaches, you know, getting through a tough time and sticking with the team and the fan base and winning things back. But very rarely does it go to these depths before coming back from it. And we've had the conversation, and you'll continue to have the conversations, and we certainly will again, about how much is his fault and how much better would it have gone with the roster, et cetera, et cetera. But to me, I can think of a small handful at best of coaches who have kind of come back from this level more often than not. Then the runway ends at some point. It's just a matter of when. And I think it ultimately goes down to what you said, Brad. Like, it has to be the right reason to change, which means the right candidate. So, you know, if you went out there and you couldn't get Jim Montgomery, then if you're not inspired by any of the candidates, then from the team's perspective, why pay two coaches just to have to maybe pay a third down the line? And also, you stick with what you have. It's a complicated issue where everyone is at fault. Coaching, players, management, all of it. All of it. All right. Why don't we jump into some NHL news here? Did you see Matt Rempe's hit
Oh my God. Dude, I love that one tweet you sent out about that one.
the Pavel Barber.
Just drop kicking guys.
He's going to get a lot of games for that.
That was so bad. That was numbers from the hash marks. Like,
and
my
just
God.
Forearm right into the upper midsection of Heiskanen's back. Like,
oh, it was his neck at best. It was his bottom of his head. And he jumped.
He's gonna get a lot of games, I think.
He got offered the in-person hearing, which means it could be north of 5 games. I have to imagine you're looking at 6 minimum. He's played 22 games and has 4 misconducts. He has a history of someone who's been a dirty player in the NHL for 10 years, and he's not even played a full season.
He knows what he is. That was one part that actually pissed me off about that hit more than anything. One, it should be a 10-plus game suspension because it was numbers for about 100 feet, and then, he gets the forearm up in the neck head area and then just drives into the board. Stupid. When your whole thing's to be a physical player, do you not know how to throw a hit, even if it's, cheap? Who hits with their forearm up there? What in the hell is he doing?
It was so egregious that you had to laugh. And, I felt bad because obviously Haskinen was dazed after that, but
it's one thing if the hits, a quick play, things are happening really fast and you just catch a guy by accident and you take your penalty. But it was numbers all day. He knew what he was doing.
yes.
And that's the type of stuff that the NHL cannot have in the professional game. I wouldn't be. The NHL owes this guy nothing. It's not like he's Duncan Keith waving his tomahawk above his head. The NHL will send a clear message that this is not going to be allowed. And man, if he gets 10+ games, I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest.
Like I said, I hope he does, because the only thing he had missing on the runway to that hit was someone standing there with orange wands directing him into the number 4 on Haskinen's back.
New York likes to have a show of authority lately, so maybe this will inspire the NHL to maybe push the authority a little bit in this suspension book.
Tom Wilson broke that team. Tom Wilson broke Dolan. He broke that team. They are beyond screwed. Things are bad in New York when Rangers fans who have seen conference finals and President's Trophy level teams and 50 goal scorers are sitting there saying that they're actually replying on Twitter saying, yeah, we actually need that this season. That was actually good. Or trying to make an excuse that it's a soft call. Buddy, I'm sitting here with the biggest purveyor of violence in the hockey media world. And Evan just said they should give him 10 games for that hit.
Yeah. And like I said, if it's, a big hit or it's just happens in and everybody loves to freeze frame and be like, well, he did this in half of a second. It's the game's happening very fast. Some of these hits happen, and that's the nature of it. They're big boys. That these things happen at the pro level. But when you target someone and he targeted a star player and that's the result, and there's no freeze frame where there's a lack of, clarity on what's happening.
There's not a defense lawyer in the world who can get that one.
That's he's busy right now, apparently, with someone else.
Yeah. Are you keeping close tabs on that one?
The internet sure is. So you can't defend those types of hit. I get why Rangers fans are we need to inject.
You can't defend those types of hits, huh?
Is there something I'm missing?
Yeah, you just accidentally made a funny joke. You keep going.
Okay.
Yeah, your finger on the zeitgeist of society was a little too on the nose there.
Whoops. Now it's all coming to me.
We're recording bright and early in case you haven't noticed by the quality of this episode.
Yeah, so like I said, I get why Rangers fans are this is the injection of life we need, but maybe not quite that type of injection.
Speaking about things along those lines, did you see the Calgary-Chicago incident?
No.
That was the funniest thing. So talking about how NHL teams' brains can get broken. So Martin Pospisil was running around against Chicago. He laid I think it was a pretty high hit. As he does. He's known for it. I think he had a pretty high hit early in the game on Bedard. Someone was mentioning. I didn't see it. But then later in the game, he threw another high hit on Frank Nazar. Obviously, young guy coming up. Team didn't take kindly to that. But there was a scrum between the Flames and Hawks, and Bertuzzi was right in the middle of it. And Huberdeau was just kind of standing off to the side. Obviously, Calgary's top player. And Bertuzzi looked like he just had a moment of, if you're coming after our top players, I'm coming after yours, and just reaches around the pile and tomahawks Huberdeau in the back of the legs, just like, all right, fine.
I saw that, yeah.
I was dying laughing. Again, I'm with Evan on this one. I condone violence more than most people should.
On the ice.
And that
on
was...
the ice, because we...
Yeah, settled down.
Oh, I'm okay with that. Let that be clear.
So... but I felt bad for Huberdeau in the moment, obviously, because you don't want to see someone like just get whacked out of the blue like that. But you know when you like, I didn't even
This
mean to say
episode
that.
is unhinged.
This is not good. It's either great or not good.
It's the best. But like I said, you know when you have that type of laugh where like a ton of air and a weird noise comes out at you, just like in an instant. I had one of those when I saw Bertuzzi reach around and just swing.
I saw that described as like this vicious, violent slash, and I was like, oh, Bertuzzi two-handed a guy. He was like his hand was halfway up the shaft, and he one-handed it. Mind you, these players are
Keith them, but it was in the legs, not the head,
not the teeth. Yeah, it was like these players are strong, and if you know how to get a guy, you can make it really hurt. But Huberdeau will be fine. Yeah,
he didn't even go down. He joined the scrum immediately after. Like, I'm sure it didn't tickle.
Mission accomplished. Then,
but he was like, he didn't.
I watched that and I thought, oh, God, there's so many times when Bertuzzi was playing for Detroit that he was just like, for whatever reason, like spilled all over the ice or out of position and just kind of, I don't want to say uncoachable, but the guy never really changed the way he played. But I would love that kind of terrier piss off energy right now in Detroit.
The give a shit level was always high with him. And I appreciated that.
Yes. Okay. Why don't we wrap up this part and get into our final segment here on the Winged Wheel podcast?
We're going to overtime.
Overtime is brought to you by our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. If you want to support the show and join the Dub Club, you get access to benefits like our overtime bonus episodes, which record right after these main ones. They're a blast. I promise you that the content is probably, honestly, based on this season's hockey, more entertaining than the main show sometimes. You get access to our Patreon exclusive Discord, and you're automatically entered into all of our giveaways. For example, we give away 2 tickets to every Detroit Red Wings home game going directly to our Patreon supporters. So again, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. Okay, I promised you guys a Christmas gift. This is not from me. This is from one of our listeners and Patreon supporters, Keith. Very kindly sent these our way. Keith, thank you so much. But, we like to be professional and not gaudy and very put together and formal looking on the show. So I thought, what better way to do so than a Winged Wheel podcast fan chain with the oversized acrylic logos. That's one for you, Brad.
Oh, we have multiple.
I'm sure if I wore these during the episodes, Ryan would love it.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, the editing will be out of this world. Wow.
Sounds like Christmas.
They're double-sided too, so you won't get them the wrong way.
So fanchains.etsy.com if you want to get your own, but these things are awesome.
Very cool.
Very cool. Okay, let's take some questions before we jump into our own Christmas break here from our Patreon supporters. Give Simon the Heart says, usually when there's no clear number 1 draft pick, it's a sign of a weak draft, or at the very least, you're not getting someone generational with the first pick. So would you rather have 2 of the top 4 in this year's draft or Gavin McKenna? Purely hypothetical, not trying to lead you to say the Red Wings should tank for the next 2 years. I'm taking 2 of this top 4. I understand with Gavin McKenna, but consider what 2 of this top 4 could do and the windows you have with Larkin and DeBrincat.
Can I pick the 2?
Yeah.
Then I'm taking the 2. I would take one of the top 3 forwards and Schaefer. Let's shore up the lefty and another piece in the top 6. I don't think, obviously, nobody in this draft is going to be as good as McKenna, but I don't think the gap between McKenna and number 2 of this forward group is so substantial that Schaefer doesn't make up the difference.
I think McKenna makes it interesting, though. I said that very confidently, and I'm already second guessing myself. I do think he makes that interesting.
Yeah. If we are going to complain about depth this episode, you have to take the 2 picks.
What's the worst case of the top four in your mind? Where, like, let's say Schaefer and who's the top four that you would choose?
In like order, if I had to rank them right now?
Yeah.
Not necessarily based on positional need for the wings, just on talent. I probably go Hagens, Schaefer, Misa, Martone.
So Misa, Martone. Would you do Misa, Martone over McKenna?
Probably not.
You wouldn't.
No, I'd probably. I might. I don't know. That's a coin toss.
Yeah.
You get your center and you get your winger. Yeah, I'd probably take Misa, Martone now that I'm thinking about it.
Okay. Well, let's take another question here. This one from They're Canadian. That's how. It says, do you guys believe there's anything that you currently believe to be true about any aspect of the Red Wings players, coaches, management, or ownership that might change before April 7th, 2025? I would wager that they're going to make at least a trade, if not two. And, you know, the easy answer is that it's going to be like offloading at the trade deadline, which sure, yeah. But I also wonder if they don't make like a player like you're changing the face and the identity of this team kind of trade.
I don't care what it is. It's got to be something big. And by big, I don't necessarily mean we're trading Larkin for Tage Thompson, but it can't just be, oh, yeah, we traded Tarasenko for a fourth, or we traded Erik Gustafsson and a fourth round pick to get rid of him. Like, it's got to be something actually meaningful. We're just not unloading. Not this dead weight sounds a little too harsh, but you know what I'm saying.
If the move Tarasenko is to get a healthy, productive Carter Mazur in the lineup for the last 15, 20 games, then sign me up for that.
I'm at the point with Tarasenko that if there's any way to offload him for free, you do it. You hate to say it because you had hopes that he would at least be like a, you know, Sprong type at worst in terms of the amount of offense you can get from him in a depth role, even if he wasn't the Tarasenko of old. But it's just, for me, you have moments with like Kasper and Berggren, for example. But yeah, it's not even, it's about the contracts and the money and the terms, sure, but it's also about making space, like Evan just said. If Mazur's healthy, like Bob Kaser said, you know, around January, and he finds his form pretty fast, and I want to see him.
Yeah,
get the energy in.
Because my biggest indictment on Tarasenko specifically this year is there have been stretches where I genuinely forgot he was on this team. And I'm not talking shifts. I'm talking games.
Yeah, it's not been good. The fit has not been there.
The next one, and this one's from Amanda Hug and Kiss.
Okay.
I've seen that Simpsons gig.
Yeah. Is there anyone you can see requesting a trade to get off this team? The easy answer to that is Patrick Kane.
So I was watching that podcast he did with Daniela and Ken there, and
The Conversation Line, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if he's going to want to go. I think, because this is the part of hockey that's so easy to forget, I think his family just really likes it there.
Yeah.
And I know his son's really good friends with Archie, Alex DeBrincat's son. Like, the family dynamic here, I don't think we take into account enough, especially considering he's got the no trade clause.
Well, you're the family man.
Yeah, like I would.
Evan and I are just married to the money.
Well, they can just waive him.
I'm divorced, but so I see what you're saying, Brad, and that's a big reason why he's in Detroit now, even though this wasn't a team that wasn't going to get him to the Cup this year, for example. But if he doesn't think that this team's going to turn around and give him a chance at the Cup over the next 2 or 3 years at most, like, we've seen Patrick Kane. Yeah, his mind is still there and he still wants to do the things he used to be able to do. But the slowdown is real. He can't engage physically. He needs to be on a team where he doesn't need to do those things. And so if he has an opportunity and it's not too far away from home, I could see him picking another Eastern Conference team to go say, yeah, I want to chase this Cup.
If he had no family considerations here, I'd be shocked if he hadn't already demanded the trade.
So I don't know. And I also think that Patrick Kane would be one of those players where if there is a coaching change at some point this season, you see how differently things go. I don't think you're going to unlock like the old best American player of all time, Patrick Kane, in him, but maybe more than what we see now because this isn't making the most of this version of Patrick Kane. Okay, we're actually going to wrap this up. A little bit of housekeeping. So upcoming, we have a little bit of a break of our own. We are going to take some time off as we usually do for the holidays, and then we're going to be back with you. Our plan is on the 29th. We'll see where the next episode comes out. There may be a surprise for you in the middle of the break there. We'll see how things go, but we want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas, a Happy Holidays, whatever you're celebrating. We hope you're safe, you're happy, you're warm, you enjoy it with your family, your friends, you enjoy whatever you need to enjoy, and whether that's watching Red Wings hockey or the 3 days off between the St. Louis game and the Toronto game. We're wishing everyone a happy holidays, and we'll be back before too long. Thank you all so much for tuning into the Winged Wheel podcast. If you're a new listener, welcome. It's, I want to say it's not always like this. We're not always so delusional from being recording at this hour in the morning, but maybe the vibes have been pretty similar all year. And if you're a listener of old, enjoy the break. It's going to be nice. Thank you to all of the sponsors of the Winged Wheel podcast and to all of our Patreon supporters. Again, patreon.com/Winged Wheel podcast if you want to support the show. And if you want to support, but Patreon's not for you, subscribe wherever you're tuning in, whether that's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and leave a rating, whether it's the stars or the thumbs up on YouTube. All of that really helps. Tell a friend about the show. To our name level supporters on Patreon, we could not do this without you. Arjun Shanker, Yves Bartels on behalf of the Sarah Grand Foundation, Aikfer, Samuel Soderholm, Icon, Alexander Hansen, Ghost of OSBP, Glenn Brabham, Croner's Left Knee, Ashley Whitehead, Sea Lion, Matthew M. Rice, Adam Rose, Adam Zuiza, Admiral Matt S. of the Cheesebag Navy, Asher Killian, Beer League Legend, Best James Bond, Carl Brutina Nanaluski, Carl Provi, Citizen High Five, Clip Clop Nene, Connor Scovey, Craig Kibble, Denny's Gamer Girl, Derek Enstam, Seider, Dickens, formerly Marlon Winchester, DJ Denton, Eric Hill, Jin and UC, Give Blood Fight Probert, Goose Looney's Drinking Club, Griffin God Creatives, Hockeytown Love, Hockeytown Matt, Hassam Al-Qassem, Jay Gollum, Jacob Turner, Jeff Pridemore, John Ingalls, Jonathan Miller, Kaylin Wood, Marcus, Marty, Matt Keeler, Matt McKay, Michael Edlund, Mr. Kuzi, R.A., Riley Enright, Roy Donk, Ryan Britt, Scott Martin, Skeletor, Stephen Ordeleb, That's What I Appreciate About You, Wallman's Elite Dancing D, What's the point of having a podcast if you're not running a crypto scam? You're telling me. Eyes Are Playing Stan, Aaron Hutson, General Andy Bohanna of the Cheesebag Army, Sam Bankson, Ron AB, All Motor No Hands, Ann Stanislavski, Antonio Gracias, Axel Sandy Pellica, Bellingham Acid Balls, Bex, Chimkim Nutgets, Commander Ben Barron of the Cheesebag Space Force, Connor Layton and Corey Prida, Darren Fick, Datsukes Dangleberries, Deep in Seider, Dylan Larkin, Trade Sacrifice, Eric Nance, Evan Beckner, Frank Stanley, Gene Sullivan, Grepsky, Griffey Boy, James Pridemore, Jeremiah Dobo, Jim, JM Rhapsody, Joey Jojo Shabadoo, Josh Yelton, Chaotic Monkey, Keenan O'Donohue, Casper the Unfriendly Ghost, Kevin McCracken, Quaz, Larkin's Loyal Lemming, Les Grossman's Ungodly Firestorm, Linda Hull, Lonnie Zone, Lucas Raymond, Mitch Minier. Now I ain't saying she a gold digger, but she ain't messing with no broke chungus. Ophelia, as good as it gets, Ryan M, Sam Migliaccio, Steven, that other guy, the Hodag, the Hat 123, Trent Thorough, Wings fan in St. Louis, Scott, and your second favorite patron. Thank you all so very much. Enjoy the holidays.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to visit wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you'll find links to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find ways to support the show, like Patreon, official podcast merchandise, and more. And don't forget to follow us on X at Winged Wheel Pod, at Ryan Hanna, WWP, at Brad Crisco, and at Hockeytown Evan, as well as Winged Wheel Podcast on Instagram.